Please welcome our next contestant, Russ Dantu, A Simple Act of Kindness.
Thank you.
A Simple Act of Kindness, Russ Dantu.
I had just finished lunch and was heading to my car when I heard a voice. "Excuse me, sir, excuse me." I looked back to see a lady in her 50s. She explained that her husband had died recently. She was out of money, and she was trying to get a bus ticket for a better life. Could I find it in my heart to give her $20? I reached into my pocket, and I gave her what I had. And as she took the money, she squeezed my hands. "Thank you, sir. Thank you." Mr. Contest Chair, ladies and gentlemen, when I got home that night, my wife just shook her head. "Again, Russ? They must see you coming." But I just smiled. It took me back to a time when someone's single act of kindness saved my life. I was 15 years old and on the run. A heated argument with my father had left me packing a bag with all the essentials. An extra pair of pants, 2 shirts, a couple of pairs of socks, and 4 pairs of underwear. My mother always said, "Don't get caught with dirty underwear." I had $21 in my pocket. I had a good job, working in a restaurant on weekends, $4.25 an hour, plus tips. I wasn't afraid to sleep in the school field. And my best friend Jason would keep me well fed with drugs and alcohol. After 3 long nights of sleeping in that cold, wet school field and being very well fed, I started thinking that maybe I'd made a mistake. On the 4th day, the guidance counselor, Mrs. M, called me down to her office for a little discussion. Now, I must admit, even though Mrs. M was really old, she was pushing 25 or 26. I had a crush on her. She had long, flowing reddish-brown hair, piercing eyes, and a voice like Whitney Houston, only rougher. She said, "Russ, the last 4 months, your grades have dropped, your attitude stinks, and now I hear you're living on the street." We argued back and forth, and then she said, "Fine, read this out loud." I didn't need the paper. It was a poem I had written for my parents. "You say that I can't handle drugs, and you know you may be right. I don't mean to upset you. I don't want to start a fight. But once you start, it's hard to stop it. The truth is, I don't want to drop it. I like to drink. I like to get high. Don't worry about me. I'll get by. You say I won't. And if I don't, just leave me. Let me die." And Mrs. M looked deep into my eyes and she said, "Not on my watch. You are a lost soul. You've got 2 crutches, drugs and alcohol. Let me help you. Stay clean for the rest of the school year, and I will give you $100. I'm not sure why I accepted the deal from Mrs. M. Maybe it was because I had a crush on her. Or maybe it was because, deep down, I knew she was right. When I left her office, my father was standing there. "Son, we can work this out. Please, come home." And I did. Mrs. M's rules were simple. No drugs, no drinking, no Jason. And a funny thing happened along the way. My grades started to improve, and my parents became happier. My teachers became happier. I became happier. 2 months later, Mrs. M, true to her word, gave me a crisp $100 bill and bought me lunch. She said, "Russ, I am so proud of you. And remember, when you live a life of love, you will love the life you live." Mrs. M's simple act of kindness continues to pay dividends in my life to this day. Now I speak in schools and I share my past and how Mrs. M helped me. And when I look back at my past, I realize it almost cost me my life. My best friend Jason, he quit school. He became a heroin dealer. And bang! He was shot and killed. And it could have been me laying there if not for Mrs. M's simple act of kindness. I met up with Mrs. M a few years ago. It had been over 30 years, and seeing her brought me to tears. This time, I bought lunch. And when we were done, I handed her a card with a note inside. "Mrs. M, you gave me this when I needed it most, but it was never mine to keep. Please accept it back as a symbol of everything you have done for me. Thank you for saving my life." It was never about the money. It was the help she offered, the hope she gave, and the belief that there was something good in me. I will never forget Mrs. M's simple act of kindness. And I will never forget those words. When you live a life of love, you will love the life you live. Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you. Thank you.